Hi everybody, happy Monday. Today I want to talk to you about one of the most overlooked causes of reading and writing difficulties. And I want to preface this by saying it's not to say that it's the only cause or that it will fix everything, but this reflex, so I've been talking about primitive reflexes, so part of your child's baby brain, this reflex is retained, meaning it's there and it shouldn't be, in 50% of dyslexics. And that is the ATNR, the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex. So if you want to fix reading struggles, if you want to address dysgraphia, writing difficulties, learning disabilities, so much, even ADHD and so forth, you really want to look at this. And so this is one of my biggest frustrations when it comes to reading difficulties, and the way we address them is that we address reading difficulties with more reading or more phonics or all kinds of other really amazing sometimes strategies that are great if we do the right action at the right time. So the root cause of reading and writing difficulties isn't usually that the child has had, not insufficient phonics instruction, though that can be the case if it's not a true disorder. It has to do with something way deeper than instruction or letters or sounds. It has to do with brain hemisphere integration. Are the left and right brain hemispheres talking well? Is there good balance? Is there good hand-eye coordination, eye tracking, as well as auditory processing skills? So the ATNR reflex should integrate by 6 months of age. 6 to 7 months of age. If it does not, then it's starting to act like it's just basically becoming more of a problem. And so basically what it is it's an involuntary response where the infant or child will turn its head towards a sound, a light, tactile stimulation, so maybe something like touch. And the side of the direction that their head is turned, their leg and arm will straighten. And then on the opposite side, it will flex. And it kind of looks somewhat, if you start going back and forth with their head, they'll literally start doing the lizard. And that's how they get into the creeping motion. And that reflex is also important for doing that. So what this reflex does, I'm going to go into more detail, but it fine-tunes the auditory and visual pathways. So it has many purposes in terms of survival, but it needs to integrate. And if it doesn't, that's where we're going to see the reading and writing difficulties. So I want to, just before I go on, just remind you, I do have a masterclass coming up on Saturday, February 27th, this Saturday, and I will be talking more in depth about all of this type of stuff and causes that you may not have heard of. But as far as the ATNR goes, so one of its main purposes is just to help the baby move through the birth canal. So the reflex helps to inhibit the movement of the limbs so that the baby can kind of descend in a corkscrew fashion. The other purpose that the ATNR does is because it will, if the baby's lying on its belly, it will cause the baby to turn its head to the side so that we don't obstruct the airway. So very important for survival. Very important for vision development. So a lot of our kids who have poor reading comprehension, it's not always just phonemic awareness. They might have a dyslexia diagnosis, but there could be other factors that are slowing them down and keeping them stuck, even when they've had OG reading instruction and all these other amazing forms of instruction. And so it assists with hand-eye coordination and control, which is very much a part of reading, believe it or not. It helps with depth perception as well as eye tracking. Near vision is developed first, and then as a baby starts to creep, because that reflex causes them to start doing that as they develop muscle tone and muscle development, they will develop far vision, which, by the way, is something that a lot of kids don't have, or I don't want to say don't have, but they have, that is weak today, is far vision. And a lot of experts are attributing some of this to the fact that there are so few kids doing a significant amount of tummy time, crawling, creeping, all of that type of stuff. So it also assists with muscle tone and movement. So it stimulates those first homolateral crawls where both sides of the body, so left arm, left leg is moving together, and then right arm, right leg. And then it does the cross lateral, which is what we see when we're crawling. And what cross lateral movement does is it improves the connectivity between the left and right brain hemispheres. And if that connectivity is not there, we're going to have all kinds of problem. So basically, before the ATNR should disappear, one of its last kind of things that it does is it really helps to develop that bundle of nerves called the corpus callosum between the left and right brain hemispheres. And in each brain hemisphere, by the way, has very specialized roles. So the auditory cortex, for example, is on the left side of the brain, whereas the visual cortex is on the right side of the brain. And we need those to not only working optimally and to be well developed, but we need them to be communicating well so that they can work together. And so that's also where breakdown can happen. And then lastly, it helps to, as I mentioned, develop auditory and visual processing. So phonemic awareness, auditory processing, hearing, all of that type of stuff. And because it helps to stimulate the inner ear, it also develops, as I mentioned before, the vestibular imbalance and so forth. So basically, what can happen is if this ATNR stays retained, if it does not integrate into the nervous system, the response that was assisting with survival or should assist with survival and development is now getting in the way and is basically an obstruction to the child from optimally learning and developing and so forth. So it almost becomes like a response that hinders your child from moving forward and will cause a lot of difficulties with reading and writing. So if your child has difficulty crossing the midline, telling the difference between left and right, sometimes what will happen is a child might appear to have good eye tracking until all of a sudden they have to cross their midline, so cross the middle of their body. That imaginary line is very real as far as the brain and body are concerned. And often when I'm screening kids in my office, their eyes will skip more so as they're crossing the midline. Some of them can't cross at all, or it's just when things start to really break down. And so that's going to really affect their ability to read fluently and so forth. The bottom line is that strong motor and strong motor skills and coordination and right and left brain integration is absolutely key for fluent reading. And if that doesn't happen, then that's where the breakdown with the reading and the writing and so forth are going to occur. So you might have a child, for example, who isn't very good at copying notes from the board. It's not uncommon for a lot of kids today to have these IEP recommendations that they need to be given a set of notes because they can't actually copy onto their paper, right? What they can't do this back and forth motion. And the reason for that is that as the eyes want to turn in the direction, basically the eyes want to turn in the direction of their hand rather than where the board is. It's that reflex, right? That ATNR reflex that is kicking in, that's preventing them from being able to do this. And that is like just kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's going to cause breakdown with these kids, which is why if there are reading difficulties, we so want to work on integrating that ATNR reflex. And so the bottom line is the ATNR will affect phonemic awareness, auditory processing, visual processing. It will even affect memory. And just to kind of give you an idea in terms of difficulties, I'm going to just quickly run through a list. Let me know if you're seeing any of this at home. Post in the comments below if you're watching the live or the replay. If you're seeing your child struggle with these reading and writing difficulties, and if you're going, oh my God, yes, they do that as well, because so often parents will say, they have reading difficulties, yeah, and they also have these other weird things, but they don't know that all of that is connected to having a disorganized brain or lower brain levels that are underdeveloped. So poor hand-eye coordination, reading and writing difficulties, obviously difficulty with the midline. They might have something called mixed dominance where they use their right hand for some stuff and their left eye and their right foot and then their left ear. So their brain really hasn't chosen a dominant side. And we call that ambidextrous and we think that's a good thing. It's actually not. It means that the brain is disorganized. By the age of about 7 or 8, definitely, the brain should have chosen a side. And you can test this really easily. Just ask your child, kick kick the ball, don't tell them what you're doing, and you'll see, hit the ball with your hand, put this up to your eye, put this up to your ear, and they will automatically bring it up to their dominant ear, eye, whatever the case may be, and you'll very quickly pick up if they have mixed dominance. So if there are letter reversals like B's and D's and P's and Q's and so forth, that's a huge indication that the ATNR may be retained, as well as just general gross motor difficulties with balance. It could be difficulties with fine motor. A lot of my kids with dysgraphia have difficulty or have a retained ATNR, and it might be dysgraphia where they can't process, and it also might be dysgraphia where they're really pressing way too hard, or they just have really poor penmanship. It's really illegible. All of this can be connected to a retained ATNR. And the other thing I wanted to mention is there could be speech and language impairments or difficulties. That's really common when there is a retained ATNR. Poor short-term memory, and even stuff like, if it's really severe, it could be awkward gait, kind of an awkward walk, poor listening skills, and some parents will even say, yeah, they do have these weird jerky eye movements. All of that can be really connected to a retained ATNR. So let me know, do you see any of these signs in your child? I am going to be doing a webinar, as you know, on Saturday, February 27th, and I will be talking about this. And actually at the end, I'm going to be giving a free screening to anybody who attends, and you will be able to test and determine if your child has a retained ATNR, if your child has retained, so we'll be talking about spinal gallant reflex as well later this week. So let me know in the comments below. I'll post the sign up link for the masterclass in the comments below so that you can sign up for that. And the basis of the web class is just, what is the root cause of why so many kids are struggling and what is missing? Because whenever I was teaching for so many years, there was just this mode of thought that this is what it is. You either need medication for this or they need an IEP, and that's the end of the story. And talk about mind-blowing whenever I found out there's a whole other, world out there in terms of therapies that go way beyond compensations and instead move to correction so that kids can really move past those things that are really limiting them. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope to see you on Saturday. I will be talking more this week about primitive reflexes. I will be talking about the spinal gallant reflex, and you definitely want to check that out. Again, if your child is struggling with letter reversals, visual processing, or ADHD, fidgety, ants in your pants type behavior. Thanks for watching.